His wife left him and their 3 kids. 15 years later, she returned and faced a painful truth along with the consequences. Stay tuned to see what happened, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. This is the story of Samuel Hayes, a quiet farmer from rural Iowa. He wasn't wealthy, nor was he a man of grand words, but he was steady. He believed that family, like the land, needed care and patience. His wife, Renee, had once shared that vision. Together they dreamed of raising children on acres of soil that could feed both stomachs and souls. But dreams can fracture. One morning, Samuel woke to find her gone. No arguments the night before, no warning signs he could recall. Only absence, an unmade bed, a closet half empty, and 3 children waiting in the kitchen, asking questions he couldn't answer. Ethan, the oldest at 12, kept looking toward the door, pretending he wasn't scared. 9-year-old Claire clutched her doll until its fabric tore, whispering, "Did Mama forget us?" 4-year-old Lucas wandered barefoot through the house, calling her name again and again. Samuel told them what he wished were true, that Renee only needed time, that she still loved them. But as days bled into months and months into years, even the children stopped believing. The farmhouse became heavier after that day. Samuel knew how to mend fences, till fields, and fix broken tools. But how do you fix the empty chair at the dinner table? How do you heal children who cry themselves to sleep? Still, he learned. He rose before the sun, tending the farm, and then the children, stumbling through recipes, sometimes forgetting school papers, often falling asleep over bills. He was clumsy, but he was present. And in his presence, the children slowly began to heal. Neighbors noticed. Mrs. M.C. Kinney from down the road stepped in with pies and advice about Claire's hair. Old Mr. Turner lingered by the tractor so Ethan could watch and learn. Their kindness filled cracks, but the foundation, the commitment to stay, was Samuel's alone. There were hard nights when silence pressed on him like a weight. But there were also moments of light. The children huddled by the wood stove during a blizzard, laughing at Lucas's wild story about cows that could talk. Samuel sat in the shadows that night, realizing something profound. He couldn't change that Renee had walked away, but he could decide that he never would. And with that quiet vow, the Hayes family began to build a life that would surprise even the woman who had abandoned it. The years after Renee's disappearance were not easy. At first, Samuel thought of life in terms of survival. One meal at a time, one bill at a time, one harvest at a time. But slowly, survival became something more. The farm, which had once been a shared dream, became his battleground and his shield. He tilled the soil with Ethan by his side, the boy learning to guide a tractor before he was even tall enough to see over its wheel. Claire, curious and gentle, took to the kitchen, experimenting with recipes until the kitchen smelled less like burned bread and more like home. Little Lucas followed his father everywhere, small boots crunching in the dirt, asking endless questions about seeds, rain, and why the sky sometimes cried. Samuel turned those questions into lessons. "The land teaches us patience," he told them. "You plant in hope, you work in faith, and you harvest only if you refuse to give up." Neighbors began to notice the change. What looked like a broken family was slowly becoming a force of resilience. By the 7th year, the Hayes farm was not just standing, it was thriving. New fences, repaired barns, and steady yields. Samuel's calloused hands had built something enduring. But he also knew the world was not kind to men like him. One day, Renee could appear again, and without protection, she could try to take back what she had abandoned. The thought haunted him at night. So Samuel did what few expected. He went to a lawyer. He gathered records, school attendance sheets, medical bills, neighbors' testimonies, proof that Renee had not once reached out. With that, he filed for divorce by abandonment. It was not quick. It required hearings, sworn statements, and months of waiting, but in the end, the judge granted Samuel full custody and dissolved the marriage that had already died years before. It was more than a legal victory. It was peace. Still, Samuel didn't stop there. With the help of that same lawyer, he began to set up the future. He created trust funds in each child's name, arranged life insurance, and updated his will so that every acre of land, every tractor, every dollar saved would belong to Ethan, Claire, and Lucas, protected from anyone who might one day come knocking. He never boasted about these sacrifices. The papers stayed locked in a drawer, unseen by the children, but Samuel slept easier knowing that their future was secured. 15 years passed in this way. Ethan grew into a man, broad-shouldered and steady, managing fields beside his father. Claire became a nurse, the first in the family to earn a college degree. Lucas, once the barefoot boy chasing after cows, earned a place at an agricultural science program. The farm had become more than land. It was a monument to sacrifice, to perseverance, to a father's promise that he would never walk away. But then, just when peace felt certain, a shadow from the past returned. One gray autumn afternoon, as Samuel repaired a broken fence by the edge of the field, a car pulled into the driveway. The door opened, and there she was, Renee, older now, lines etched into her face, eyes carrying the weight of choices made long ago. She stepped out slowly, as if afraid the ground might give way beneath her. "Samuel," she said, voice unsteady, "I need to see the children." The past he thought he had buried was standing before him, and this time he knew he couldn't shield the children from the truth. The farmhouse kitchen hadn't changed much in 15 years. The same wooden table scarred by homework scratches and hot pans. The same curtains Claire had sewn when she was 13. The same family photographs lined the walls, though none of them included Renee. That night, Samuel gathered his children around that table. Ethan, now 27, sat stiff in his chair, jaw tight. Claire, 24, crossed her arms, her nurse's badge still clipped to her scrubs. Lucas, 19, fresh-faced and restless, shifted uneasily. They had grown into their own lives, but the word mother still carried a shadow. When Renee walked through the doorway, the air turned heavy. She looked smaller than Samuel remembered. Her coat was worn thin, her hair pulled back in a way that made the silver strands stand out. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "I've missed you all," she said, voice catching. No one moved. Ethan's gaze stayed locked on her, cold and unwavering. Claire tapped her fingers on the table, her silence sharper than words. Lucas lowered his eyes to the floor, his shoulders drawn tight. Renee tried again. She spoke of regret, of nights spent awake with guilt, of the way life had crumbled after she left. She said she had found faith again, that she wanted to start over, that she longed for forgiveness. But her words landed like stones on water, sinking without a ripple. Finally, Ethan spoke. His voice was calm, but each word cut. "Where were you when Dad worked himself sick just to keep us fed? Where were you when Claire cried herself to sleep for years? Where were you when Lucas stopped asking for you because he knew you'd never come back?" Renee's eyes filled with tears. "I was lost. I didn't know how to be what you needed." Claire shook her head. "Then, why are you here now? You don't know who we are. Do you even know what I studied? Do you know what Lucas is about to do with his life?" Renee's silence was her answer. Lucas finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "You're a stranger. That's all you are now." The room went quiet. Even the ticking of the old clock on the wall seemed too loud. Samuel cleared his throat, steady as always. "Renee," he said, 15 years ago, you made a choice. I raised them to be strong without you, and as you can see, they are. You don't get to walk back in as if nothing happened." Renee bowed her head. She had come hoping for an open door. Instead, she found a wall she could not climb. When she finally rose to leave, her words were barely above a whisper. "I only wanted a chance." No one stopped her. The sound of the front door closing echoed through the house like the ending of a chapter. But Samuel knew this wasn't over. Not yet. His children needed more than rejection. They needed proof that their lives, their future, and their place in his world were unshakable. The house was heavy after Renee left. No one said much at dinner. Ethan pushed food around his plate, Claire stared out the window. Lucas hardly spoke a word. The silence said what none of them wanted to admit. Her return had reopened wounds they thought were healed. That night, Samuel knew what he had to do. He went to his desk, pulled out a thick envelope, and laid it on the kitchen table. "Come sit," he said. The three of them gathered, curious but tense. Samuel opened the envelope and spread out papers. Court orders, legal decrees, trust documents, land deeds. His hands were steady, but his voice carried weight. "After she left, I didn't just keep the farm running," he began. "I went to court. I filed for divorce by abandonment. I was granted sole custody. Legally, she has no rights here, not anymore." Ethan leaned forward, scanning the papers. Claire's eyes widened. Lucas let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Samuel continued. "I also made sure your futures were safe. Each of you has a trust fund. The farm, the land, every dollar saved, it's already in your names. If anything happens to me, no one can touch it. Not even her." Tears welled in Claire's eyes. "You did all this for us?" Samuel nodded. "Because love isn't just a word, it's protection. It's sacrifice. It's making sure you never feel abandoned again." For the first time since Renee's visit, the tension broke. Ethan reached across the table, gripping his father's hand. Claire leaned against his shoulder. Lucas whispered, "You didn't have to." "But you did," Samuel smiled faintly. "That's what fathers do. They stay, even when it's hard." The papers on the table weren't just ink and signatures. They were proof. Proof that 15 years of struggle had not been wasted. Proof that Samuel's love had been steady, unshaken, and permanent. And in that moment, the Hayes family felt something they hadn't felt in years: certainty. Word spread quickly in town that Renee had come back. Some whispered that she wanted to make things right. Others said she was looking for help. But she never returned to the Hayes farm again. Through a mutual acquaintance, Samuel later learned the truth. Renee was drowning in debt, had lost jobs one after another, and was trying to rebuild in another state. Whatever she came for, it wasn't family, it was survival. And when she found no open door, she left for good. Back at the farm, life settled. The silence she left behind was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. Ethan worked the fields with quiet confidence, already carrying the strength of a farmer twice his age. Claire graduated nursing school, the first Hayes to walk across a stage in cap and gown. Lucas packed for college, eager to study agricultural science and bring new knowledge back to the land that had raised him. One evening, as they sat around the same wooden table, Ethan spoke softly. "Dad, you saved us." Samuel shook his head. "No. We saved each other. Every harvest, every hard winter, every laugh around this table, we did it together." Claire reached for his hand. Lucas smiled through tears. The farm was no longer a reminder of abandonment. It was proof of survival, of love, of resilience carved into every acre of soil. Renee's absence had once threatened to break them. But in the end, her return only proved what Samuel already knew: this family was unshakable. And so they moved forward, stronger than ever, not defined by who left, but by who stayed. Samuel Hayes didn't just raise 3 children alone. He built a legacy that no absence could erase. His sacrifices became their foundation. His resilience became their inheritance. And when the past finally returned, his children saw clearly who had always been there. Now, a question for everyone watching. If someone who abandoned a family came back after 15 years, should they be given a second chance? Or should the door remain closed forever? Share thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched the heart or reminded anyone of the power of family, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.